Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Unlearn with Bianca. If you're here for the first time, then welcome. On this podcast, we explore everything around self healing, health, personal growth, the mind body connection, relationships, and more. Hey guys, welcome back. Today on the podcast, I'm very lucky to be sitting down with Beck Marshall. Beck is a registered clinical hypnotherapist, NLP practitioner, and trainer. Her journey into hypnotherapy was shaped by personal health challenges, which deepened her passion for helping others overcome stress, anxiety, chronic pain, and limiting beliefs. Alongside her hypnotherapy, she's also a holistic fertility, birth, and postpartum educator, guiding women and parents to feel empowered and informed through their birth journeys. Welcome, Beck. It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Yay! This has been in the works for a while, hasn't it? Yeah, let's just get into it. Do you want to tell the listeners a little bit about what has led you to where you currently are and what you do?
It's such a great question because there's so many different ways to how I've been led here. I think I've been being led here my entire life. It's just dependent upon when we listen and also dependent upon what pathway we take. So I had chronic health issues from a little girl, really. I had kind of a lot of anxiety that I wouldn't have been able to label as anxiety then, but I remember being hospitalized a lot. So I was in and out of hospital with these chronic stomach pains. And that would have really been linked to a lot of anxiety at that time, but I couldn't identify it. I then, later on in my later teen years, I started to go through a similar situation of having hospital admissions. I'd have 7 a year, no answers. And I remember kind of the last time that I was in hospital, I was laying there and I'd just been pumped full of morphine, which I actually found out that I was allergic to afterwards.
Oh my gosh.
And
Wow.
I was lying there, I was like, there's got to be a better way. There has to be a better way.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when I was kind of introduced. I was probably about 20 at this stage, and I was introduced to the likes of naturopaths and holistic nutritionists. And so that's where that part of that journey began. And I started actually studying herbal medicine and also nutrition because I fell in love with it because it made such an impact and difference in my life in terms of a positive way. But there were still pieces of the puzzle that were missing. It was kind of like no matter how many physical things we threw at things like herb tonics and we ate well and we removed gluten and dairy and all these things, there was still a resistance. I was still having issues. I was still having chronic pain. And I know that you'll really relate to this, given the fact that you've had a chronic pain journey as well, is that then, but just before my dad passed, so he was passing on the 23rd, he passed on the 23rd of December 2016. And I found out I was pregnant on the 27th of December 2016, which was coincidentally my 27th birthday.
Oh.
So really unusual week dealing with grief of my father passing, and then dealing with also welcoming a baby into the world that was very unplanned, right? And the day before, I said to my husband, when we have a baby, it'll be like our trips to Europe. We would just got on a plane and arrived and had no accommodation booked. And sure enough, I was. Yeah. And sure enough, I was actually pregnant at the time. And then before my dad passed, he said to me, and I've probably shared this with you before or shared this with a lot of people, is that I was in such a chronically stressed state from corporate careers that he was tapping. I can still feel the echo of his heart, like the tap on his heart. And he looked at me with these beautiful, bright green eyes with this blue around the edge of them. Like I can see it perfectly in my mind. And he said, passion will drive you with it. You'll never lose your way. And your life's going to take a huge turn very soon. And it was like he knew before he passed.
Wow.
And it did. And he told me that I would use my speech and drama diploma, which not many people even know about, but I have a teaching qualification in it. And I thought, there's no way I'll ever use that. And sure enough, I do within hypnotherapy. But I was terrified at the prospect of giving birth. I was riddled with fear. I was conditioned with all of these belief systems that weren't my own. And I know we'll talk about beliefs soon as well, but I thought that birth would be painful, birth would be horrific. I would end up, having a surgical birth, or the worst case scenario was played out over and over in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And a friend I sat down with said to me, "Have you heard of hypnobirthing?" And I just thought, oh, this sounds, out the gate. But at the same time, I was really curiously minded. So I read this book within 3 days, and I was convinced around the logicality of it. And it was the first time, or first insight into the nervous system and the functionality of it. And I thought, wow, if I can get this under wraps, I can have a really empowering, wonderful birth. Even just knowing how to use my breath and breathe properly will make a profound difference in
Mm-hmm.
my experience. So I started visualizing and rehearsing my birth and doing all this stuff that people thought I was nuts. Like, they thought I was insane.
When was it? What was this? 2017? Did you say?
2016.
Oh, 16. Yeah, so still kind of
Oh,
a little
at the
more
end. So
where
yeah, I was, when I did the course in hypnobirthing, it was 2017.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
So I got the
yeah.
last spot on a course. And so it
Mm-hmm.
was meant to be. And I did the first session, it was 2 hours, and I threw the kitchen gate at it. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have the most amazing birth. It was like all of my belief systems of what I believed about birth fell away at the wayside. And I
Mm.
was so focused. And focused is probably the key word, because that's what we create in hypnosis, is a focus point of creating and working towards the intentions that we're wanting to ascertain, or, in this case, having a baby. And so I woke up on the 23rd, not the 23rd, the 22nd of August. So keeping in mind, my dad died on the 23rd of December. He was passing at 1:11. He was pronounced dead at 1:14. I woke up on the 22nd of August. I said to my husband, we should go out for lunch. It'll be the last lunch that we have together for a while. Bella will be here tomorrow morning. And who's going to argue with somebody who's 40 weeks pregnant? Not him, right? So went out for this beautiful lunch, and I kind of just felt different that day. Like, I felt like something was happening in my body. And I'd learned to be really in tune with my body at this time, which was very foreign, comparatively to being very disassociated to my body. And I was like, oh, okay, something's happening, but I wasn't too sure. And so 9 o'clock that night, I went into labor, and I texted my midwife and I said, hey, I'm in labor. I'd suggest that you get some sleep. Bella will be here by 2 a.m. And that's nuts. Like, we laugh about it to this day, because who texts their midwife and says that?
You knew, and you were the one saying it to your midwife.
Yeah. And
Wow.
so anyway, I labored really comfortably, really beautifully at home. And it got to like about 11:30 that night, or maybe 11 o'clock, I don't know. And my husband said, oh, you should come to bed and try and get some sleep, thinking Bella would be, who knows, like the next day at some stage.
Yeah.
And so I got into bed, and then I was up on my feet because my waters had released. And then
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of all on. I'd gone into what would be, a very established labour. I was in the birthing phase of labour, which is where you're working with your natural expulsive reflex, where you're bearing down as such. So you're no longer doing the work, your body's doing it for you. And it's what I call it is a surrender process. Like, you have to surrender fully to the experience at this point. And so we called the midwife, and she was like, no, your age is away. Your surges are only, or your contractions are only 40 seconds. Like, you've got probably ages. It'll be fine. Called her back. Still, no, you're fine. And I sounded really calm on the phone. So it was very hard for her to pick up that I was actually as progressed as what I was. And then it was the fourth call. She said, get in the car and I'll see you as soon as possible at St. George's, which is the birthing, or was the birthing facility in Christchurch. And so we're driving to the hospital, and I was taking off my pajama pants, and I said to Kane, you need to pull the car over. We're not going to make it. And so he could feel Bella's head, like her head was already there. And then we arrived at St. George's. We arrived at 1:11 a.m. I had 3 minutes to get from the bottom to the top, or the second story. And I birthed her at 1:14 a.m. And it was like the most empowering, life-affirming moment, where I was like, wow, if I can do that, if I have the capability to reprogram everything I've believed and all of my anxiety and all of these ideas and concepts, I have the power to create anything in my life. So
Wow.
that was kind of like that was the Catalina wine mixer, the mic drop. That was the knowing that what Dad had said to me or what he'd left me with. Gosh, I feel emotional thinking about
I
it.
feel emotional listening to you, but in a really
Um,
beautiful way. Like, it's so serendipitous to like be
yeah,
listening.
it was like it was almost like he passed for a reason. You know, it was
Mm.
like he passed in order for me to be led to what I'm doing.
Oh
Oh
my
my
gosh.
gosh. Oh, I
Yes.
didn't expect that.
I, I think it's beautiful, and I think actually it's really important to like share these moments when we feel safe to share them. And I fully have
Yeah.
had feelings of the same at points on my journey already too. So thank you for sharing, because um, yeah, those moments when we like can trust. I think it's like trust in life and trust in
Mm.
fly in front of me. Trust in our power is
Yeah.
just so life affirming, and that's when we can start to take steps towards what we want, which is that first bit, because so many of us, I think, live in fear of like I don't know how it's going to turn out, and you don't feel like anyone's got your back. So just that surrender and knowing that your dad had your back from afar, near or far.
Oh, 100%.
It's
Like
such a
this.
beautiful feeling
Yeah.
to be able to access.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. It was so beautiful. And I think that was, that hypnobirthing wasn't just powerful in the respect for labor and birth. It was a whole heap of tools that I could apply to my entire life.
Mm.
So that was kind of the moment where the whole journey of the mind body connection began.
Hmm.
I had all the physical stuff under wraps. I knew what to eat and what to, how to exercise and all those things. But
Yeah.
if you haven't taken care of your responses, and that I know that that's probably a quote actually from Joe Dispenza, if you haven't taken care of your responses in terms of your nervous system and being able to actually start getting into that space of rest and digest or understanding our capacity and our limits,
Mm.
that's where we perhaps
Completely.
can
You're
stay stuck.
missing a huge piece of the puzzle as well.
Mm.
So when you said we're talking about hypnotherapy, I've done clinical modules in hypnotherapy, but mainly how I use hypnotherapy in my work is through self-guided visualization. So I'm not probably going as deep as you are, and probably don't have the breadth of knowledge that you do. But something you said stood out to me before around a big part of hypnotherapy being focus. Like one
Mm.
element is really learn to focus. So for those listening who have never sort of come across it, or they sort of have that stage hypnotherapy,
Yeah, yeah.
and can you simplify hypnotherapy or just the concepts that you're working with when you're doing it a little bit?
Yeah, so with hypnotherapy or hypnosis, it's creating a focus on purpose for a purpose.
Mhm.
And by doing that, we're starting to get into those relaxed states. So we could look at it as brainwave activity. So that alpha brainwave, that theta brainwave, and they're the brainwaves for hypnosis. So they're really intuitive, they're creative, they're relaxing. It's almost like as though you're falling asleep at night. And when you get saturated by visuals, like suddenly you've
Mm.
got all these like kind of dream content coming in, and then you're back in your wakeful state. And you're like, whoa, okay, what just happened there? That's kind of like that hypnotic state that you can utilize. So we wake up in a state of hypnosis, we go to sleep in a state of hypnosis.
Mhm.
And this is where like visualization and mental rehearsal is a big part of it. So
Mhm.
creating a focus on purpose for a purpose. It's very goal orientated. I don't love the word goal. I find it quite masculine, but we could
Mm.
use the word intention instead, right?
Mhm.
There has to be an intention set when you go to do uh, a hypnosis process.
Completely. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And let's talk about beliefs. The
Mm,
power of our beliefs,
yeah.
right? Have you had any aha moments personally with beliefs and realized the power of your beliefs along your journey? Or what do you see in clients, a lot of the beliefs that they're working with, that once they start to shift, things really change?
All the time. I think that we're at the mercy of our belief system. I think everything comes down to what we believe about ourselves. whether we believe that we can or we believe we can't, we're entirely right. And your belief systems can work in a really resourceful way for you, or they can work in a way of hindrance for you, right? Like, I feel like what I'm listening to with clients all the time, I'll kind of go through a bit of a cognitive behavioral therapy
Mhm,
tool to uncover them sometimes. So
mhm.
I guess it's around how we deliver our questions and our language. But what I'm looking for is some kind of thought that then transfers into a belief, because really our thoughts are just recycled beliefs anyway.
Yep,
So
yep.
the three beliefs that I often will hear, or to some, they'll be, I guess, articulated in some form of this, is that I'm not worthy, I'm not
Mhm.
deserving, I'm not enough, I'm not important. They're the four ones that I hear often.
Yep,
Yeah.
yeah, the core ones. I'm not lovable. I guess that would fit
Yeah.
into I'm not deserving, I'm not worthy.
Worthiness too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I had a belief for years and years and years, and I didn't even uncover it until I started clinical hypnotherapy. And
Mm.
it was, I'm not smart. Like, I
Mm.
literally thought I was stupid. So, and I know where it came from, and I've had, and I'm so grateful for, the tribulations, the tests, the challenges, all of those things now, because back I used to feel like stuck in those victim modes of, for example, I would be pulled up by a teacher in front of the whole class and told I was
Mm.
stupid. She would literally say to me, like, "You're stupid, you'll go nowhere, you'll never make university." So I was like, yeah, okay, no, I won't. You're absolutely right. I believe you.
Of
Right?
course, an authoritative figure,
Yeah,
um, yeah, that power
totally.
completely. God, that
So,
would never apply today either.
oh gosh, no. Yeah. So I believed all that. And
Yeah.
that kept me small, kept me stuck, until my amazing colleague, but also mentor, trainer, started questioning things. Like, she would say to me, "Is that true?" When I would say, if I said something to her like, "Oh, I can't do that, like, I'm not smart enough," she would be like, "Is that true?" And I
Mm.
would kind of sit back and be like, "Oh, actually, maybe it's not true." She's like, "Where does that come from?"
So simple, but then we have to literally go searching through all of our information, all our stores of information to find something that actually really backs that up. Because
Yeah.
whatever we believe, we're going to find evidence to make that a fact, right?
Yeah.
Until we start to challenge it in the opposite direction and start to get curious. So it's a simple question, but it totally gets you thinking. It
Mm.
starts with the unlearning or the dismantling of those core beliefs.
Yes. Yeah. It totally. And I just think it has such a massive reflection on every aspect of our life. It's where we can stay small, it's where we can stay stuck. But then on the other hand, it's the opposite as well. It's where we can tap into unlimited potential. So
Yeah.
I think that, whatever you believed as a child can either do you a service or a disservice. But at
Hmm.
the same time, even though I went through that difficult moment with that teacher, I'm so grateful for her. Like, it sounds crazy. And I had a conversation with my mum the other day about it, and she was like, "Oh, she was awful, blah, blah." I said, "Yeah, she might have been, but I'm so grateful, because without her, I might not be doing what I'm doing."
Hmm.
Like, I would only want to thank her, because I, I see people put in those places to challenge you and offer you lessons and learnings. And it's really dependent upon your perspective. It
Yes.
all comes back to how you want to see things.
I also truly have that belief. I mean, of course, there's moments where it's
Yeah.
it's difficult to hold that belief for all of us, but like you said, if we can see people as almost mirrors, really
Yeah.
reflect back to us where our lessons, our learnings are, and not
Mm.
make their shit mean anything about us, but
Mm.
see it as whereas an opportunity for me to work on myself. That's a far more valuable way of going about life than being
Yeah.
triggered by everyone's stuff. And I think, again, like you said, there is reason you could be angry at that teacher. You probably were at the time. It was a
Mm.
reasonable response. But I think it's really important we all get into the habit of going back to certain points and really looking at the narrative we're telling ourselves
Yeah.
about that story or about that person to
Yeah.
change also the way our nervous system perceives that
Yeah, it's
situation.
healing those moments in time. And for me, it was a regression process, which is another hypnotherapy tool, which
Mm.
timeline NLP kind of cover that as well, that we've
Mm-hmm.
both done, is that you get to go back and then find, you address the emotions, you feel into the anger, the hurt, the sadness, all of those things. It's very powerful and very necessary to still feel
Mm-hmm.
those feelings, but then you do something with them. So you get the opportunity to let them go or forgive or figure out what you needed at that time that you weren't getting, and then discover those learnings. And then that's when you take that power to the future. So let's start imagining the future of stepping into the opposite of what you believed. So imagining, okay, so you are smart, and stacking up where you've seen yourself as that or where you've felt yourself as that.
Mm-hmm.
And like you
Mm-hmm.
said, we'll stack up whatever we believe, we'll find everything around us to
To support.
believe that stronger, and to,
Mm-hmm.
especially with, reticular activating system, etc., which we can
Mm.
talk about if you wish. But then you get the opportunity of, that future vision of, oh wow, okay, no, I do actually see myself as smart and worthy and able and all of those things, which is
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, timeline work. I haven't spoken too much actually on this podcast around NLP, because sometimes I even do a bit of stuckness trying to explain the power of it or just explain the processes. But addressing things via timeline work and parts work, and not even having to necessarily talk about a situation
Mm.
um, in a lot of detail, but really finding qualities that you needed at the time, finding the resources that you needed at the time, being able to express something that you needed to express at the time. You're literally going back in your subconscious. It can be so powerful.
Hmm. Oh,
Mm.
yeah, I love NLP. I actually think it's wonderful because it has, I suppose it's just, although it's quite metaphorical a lot of the time, you might be working with, I don't know, interesting concepts. I'll do a lot of kind of playfulness stuff with it, like
Mhm.
childlike type
Mhm.
stuff. So then the subconscious, it's really on board. But
Mhm.
I find it works really well no matter what gender you are.
Mhm.
So whether you're
Mhm.
male or female, it's like works really well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
people,
I find
it,
so.
it can be, because it's quite quick as well, in terms of some of the tools that you'll be utilizing, people get quite like the wee breakthroughs. And I think so often we're living in this fast lane of quick fixes. And it's not
Mm.
that I'm looking for a quick fix, but hey, I want to show you how powerful your mind is. Like, I want to
Yep.
show you within moments, okay? 2 minutes, right? Just give me 2 minutes and I'll show you. And
Yeah.
then suddenly it's like, oh wow, okay, yeah, I do believe that. And then you've got that belief system on
The
side.
momentum. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. For sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So what are some of the mindset tools that mindset and nervous system tools that you have learned over time that are your real go-tos? I know that's a big question, and you're probably like, oh, there's so many things I could share, but whether it be tools specifically or just things that you've learned that have really stuck with you, that really
Hmm.
drive the way you show up in life as well.
I've got a self-hypnosis. In fact, okay, the first thing is that as a clinical hypnotherapist, the most important thing for me is to teach self-hypnosis. So I
Mm.
believe that every hypnotherapist needs to be teaching that,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
then that's giving you the ability and empowering you to do the work yourself.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
I'll teach those processes. There's one particular one that I absolutely love. And the reason I love it is that I'm kind of giving it away a little bit as I share it, but there's a convincer in it. And it's the
Mm.
convincer within what I'm delivering or sharing that really gets people on board. And then it allows them to kind of open or unlock this unlimited potential within them. So there's three aspects of it that I teach. The first part is a rapid induction. So we're getting into hypnosis really quickly, and we do
Mm.
that through what we call a fractionation process. So we get to fractionations, opening and closing your eyes. And by opening and closing your eyes, you deepen your sense of relaxation really quickly.
Mhm.
Then we go through a process of belief, so being able to convince that belief system. And then the next part is embodiment. So we start to imagine. So often people are imagining their problem state. People are very good at being able to tell you all about the problem, right? So if I have somebody that comes to see me and they're like, oh, I really don't want to feel this anxiety. And I'm like, okay, so how would you like to feel? And they're like, oh, not this anxiousness. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
excellent. So if you weren't feeling the anxiousness, what might you feel instead? And I can sit there for ages with that. So as soon as they say, oh, I want to experience calm, I want to feel calm, it's like you notice this change in their body language where they relax into it. So the third part of that is the embodiment of imagining in their mind's eye, however they imagine, forming an impression, whether they see it or whether they associate to it differently, of just being calm, like imagining themselves taking deeper breaths or having this relaxed posture or a smile on their face where they're just flowing freely. And then they step into that picture, kind of like that movie screen, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we're rehearsing every story that we hear, like, the story that, that we're sharing just before. And if we're watching television, we're always rehearsing as well. So let's start rehearsing the really good stuff rather than the stuff that keeps us, I guess, in those emotional responses that can become addictive or habitual, of the
Absolutely.
sadness and the hurt and all of those things that are heavy. Let's do the
Totally.
opposite.
And that's actually why it's very in line with what I teach, a
Mm,
part of what I teach on the lightning process. And part of it is me getting curious about how often are you unconsciously drawing on negative, fearful memories and projecting the future, which is that movie part, to expect that to occur again. And this is why it's really important with chronic illness, because naturally, if you're dealing with health issues, right, you get really anxious about it. You're fearful of like, how's this going to impact work and relationships? So you're constantly trying to manage your future by those negative memories
yeah.
from the past, but that inadvertently keeps your nervous system stuck on the fight or flight.
Mm,
So for us to heal, as we know, we need to be accessing parasympathetic. So even being able to change the language of like what you want rather than what you don't want, and
yeah.
starting to visualize that, it completely sends your body into a healing state
Oh,
versus the stress state.
entirely. Something I learned in birth was that, and something I teach as well, is just by hearing the word pain, we're hypervigilant to it. So we spike
Mhm,
cortisol and we release adrenaline. So if we
mhm,
consider that word having a lot of baggage attached to it, how do we soften it? Like, even if we consider the word sensation, there's not really an unconscious meaning to it. So we
mhm,
start to actually act differently and show up differently. And a woman I was working with recently, a chronic pain client, she has a pain tonic. It's called a pain tonic. And I said, oh, imagine if you called it a comfort tonic.
mm.
What would that feel like for you? Because I said it's the same thing, right? Like,
Yeah, we have to be really mindful of the words we use, or we
yeah,
can start to become mindful of the words we use, because they are literally painting different pictures to the brain, firing up different neurology, which is shifting our physiology. And it's something so simple, but it's also not something that we're taught. So,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, we're
it's
often taught, well, I mean, we are slightly wired negatively from an evolutionary perspective, but then we don't do a great job in society, especially the medical establishment. And that's, I'm not putting them down.
mm,
They're there for a purpose, and I think they're wonderful in the respective emergency situations. But, you know, I guess for an example is that there's terminology in fertility that's used as incompetent cervix.
mm, mm.
So it's like, okay, you hear that incompetent cervix, it's like, oh, okay, well, my cervix is failing me,
Yeah,
right?
or like dysfunction.
Yeah, so that's where we have to start softening it and changing it. And it's, I you do, I suppose, quite a bit of affirmation work with clients as well, but affirmations from the perspective of like, not where you have a core belief and you say to yourself, you might be saying to yourself, I'm not enough, and then changing it to I am enough, because you're not going to believe it. Your body will just
Mhm,
reject it. But okay,
mhm,
well, let's stack up the things that you do believe you're enough at. Like, what are some things, like, let's find out your strengths. Let's start reflecting those back to you.
mhm,
And I always think of a affirmation, especially in birth, and I don't know why I'm jumping to that, but where we can feel like we could be out of control. It's like, well,
mhm,
what are we in control of? We're in
mhm,
control of our breath. So that
mhm,
can lead to, it's kind of, I guess, reintroducing a learning state and keeping it really authentic.
Mm-hmm.
So there's power in affirmations, but the wording, the language has to be done in a way that's quite clever.
Yeah. And believable to where you're currently at, I believe. We want them to feel safe within where we currently are, believable to where we're currently at. So yeah, what other mindset or learnings?
Language is the big, so that's another one, language. So considering the words that we're saying to ourselves and starting to unpack that and create those small shifts, like, from pain tonic to comfort tonic might be an example of that. Some other tools, I love heart-based tools. So I like, there's lots of top-down processes and bottom-up processes that I love. As a top-down process, bottom up, top down, top down process. I like even just the idea of naming the emotion, right?
Yeah.
So like right now I'm feeling anxious, and that just even allows us to create some taming around it. And I notice a massive difference with just naming it.
Yeah.
But then I also love using a type of tool that's from head to heart. So we're acknowledging where we are, we're feeling the emotions of what we're feeling at that time. But then, because I think it's always important to accept where we're at and to not repress anything or push it away. So let's feel into those hard emotions. But then let's do something really resourceful and powerful with them. So let's start to consider or remember a moment where we felt really proud or really wonderful, or tap into that energy to change our state. And then to start to ask our question, dropping from the head to the heart, putting our hands over the heart and asking, what if I listen to my heart right now, what does my heart need? And I think, we know that the heart has its own nervous system, its own brain.
Yeah.
So
The heart, powerful.
yeah. Yeah. So I think that can be it's a really quick tool. A lot of the tools I do teach are on the fly moments, especially when people are getting used to creating these shifts and changes. I find that people don't love long processes because there's always that belief around time, which is a belief as well, right?
Yeah.
People have all the time to scroll on their phones, but maybe not all the time to do like a meditation.
Yeah, and it's funny because when you're scrolling on your phone, the hour or the half an hour just goes like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But 2 minutes of meditation, if our body's not used to that feeling too, if we're
Yeah.
not
Resistance.
making
Yeah. I've been and so I've been creating a lot of changes in our household at the moment, because I have been on my phone too much. So I'm creating some really strong boundaries around that in the evening. And then the other thing is that when I put my daughter to bed, we always do some reading anyway. So we read, a few pages of a book, but then we do a 5-minute meditation. And the reason that I'm doing this from a young age is that to create that resilience for her as she gets older. So even if she goes away from meditation for years, as we can kind of do, and, we're starting to discover ourselves through, say, our teenage years, where we're like maybe a little bit rebellious or something. But you often circle back to those things that you believed from a really young age or that were helpful. So yeah, I think that even just starting small steps, 5 minutes, nothing that's like, not some great leap to let's dive into an hour meditation. Like that comes over time. Let's just do a 5-minute tool.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, and I've said this on quite a lot of episodes. We just have to build on top of things rather than trying to do everything at once. Because if we try to do everything at once, then we can get into guilt for not doing anything at all, and then you're back into that freeze state. So it's like,
Totally.
number one, find what works for you. Number two, do it in small increments to build that trust and safety within your body and that commitment to yourself. But also, like you said, know that if you do go off and then come back, that's okay too.
Yeah, definitely. It's finding what works for you. It's, kind of like I've quit the gym recently because I'm not enjoying it anymore. I've loved the gym for years and years, but for some reason I'm resisting it. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to get back into reformer Pilates, which I absolutely adore. And next year I want to start dance because I used to dance. So I want to start getting back into hip hop, despite the fact that I have a resistance. Don't get me wrong. I'm like, oh man, 35 and here I am throwing myself into hip hop, but I'm like, oh, I know it'll be great for my body. And that's the other thing is that we've got to use the body to heal the body.
We do. I started dance this year. I don't know if you know, but
I
I have
do. Yes.
I was actually last year. And I have resistance still, like consistently. But
Yeah.
there's two reasons I do it. Number one, for that embodiment body piece, because it's so good to so much of our movement is like we're in our head doing the reps or following the instructor.
Mm.
Dance, I think, is quite different, where you're just forced to connect. You have to remember it, obviously. It's the hard part, but connect into the body and like move in a way that feels good. And I
Yeah.
think that's just so powerful. Like I haven't done anything like that in such a long time. So it's such a good feeling to connect to, even though there's a lot of resistance.
Okay, I'm curious to know, what have you noticed within yourself, or what shifts have you noticed by doing that embodiment process of dancing?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I've been doing heels dance, which is
Yeah, that's cool.
quite a it doesn't have to be sensual or empowering, but I think given the fact that like the lights go off so people can really just be free in themselves. There's a few things that have been so powerful. The first thing is I have not been in spaces where females fully back each other 100%, which is something I was thinking about the other day. I'm like, I know these spaces, but all shapes and sizes, all ages, um, you can do what you choose. It's your body, move how you wish. I think that's really powerful to be in spaces like that, and actually really rare to find that. But in terms of my body, like flexibility is improving, which is nice because of that whole mind body connection thing. I think so often when we're rushing around day to day, we just don't have that awareness of the openness in our body
Mm,
that things like dance and yoga can bring. And I guess when you become more flexible and open in your body, you start to hold your body in a different way. So I absolutely feel like as I am gradually seeing progress, I should say, I'm feeling more confident. And that is
mm.
because the body's also leading the brain,
That's
like
so
it just
cool.
feels different. So it's
Yeah,
very much a feeling process and very intuitive for me to like start it. But now looking back, I'm like, oh, there has been some like massive changes for sure.
yeah, yeah. I think that dance is like incredibly not just powerful but really beautiful as well.
Yeah.
And I dance getting ready. Like this morning before this podcast, when I'm putting on my makeup, I'm dancing the whole time. Like I'm dancing
Yeah.
all the time. But you would never see me really dancing. I wouldn't show you. I wouldn't like you come around for a cup of tea and I wouldn't be like, "Hey Bianca, like look at me dancing."
Let's
You
dance.
know?
And that's the other thing about going to a class though, because you are essentially rewiring your ability to show up confidently around other people too.
Yeah.
Because you don't, you can obviously go down the back and do your own thing, but you are putting yourself out there. And I don't think there's anyone that starts something new that doesn't have a few nerves. And
Yeah.
getting past that resistance is so good for our brain.
Yeah. And even that, like with, when I do have those nerves, it's kind of naming that out loud, like being able to, I think there's being able to accept that part, and that's kind of like that parts where we were talking about before, accept that
Yeah.
that part's there, but also invite in another part at the same
Mm.
time, right?
Yeah, holding both as well. And I think that comes with the more work we can do on ourselves, you
Mm,
are able to hold two parts and not let that part that doesn't want us to be seen or show up feel
mm,
overpowering. You can hold that, but also have that part of like, I know this is something I need to do, and I know that this will benefit my future, and I know that I'll build confidence in this, and being able to not, like you said, not push the emotions down, name them, but still move forward.
yeah, yeah, entirely. That's very true. And as women, especially, perhaps in the last, few generations of kind of, to be seen and not heard or whatever it might be, like kind of all these kind of interesting concepts where women have always had to kind of play small.
Yeah,
Mm,
absolutely. Like I just finished up self-sourced, which was my group coaching, and I brought in a lot of concepts around like shaking, moving, using our voice, breath, alongside some mindset work. But the resistance that I even had to a lot of these things just last year, or just the uncomfortableness of even like, certain sounds coming out when we do breath work, or
Yeah.
just that it's such an unconscious thing that I think conditioning that we have as women, that extra layer that I think we need to move through
Mm.
of just the good girl conditioning, or
Yes.
how we should behave or what it is accepted.
Yeah.
And I think it's just so freeing when we actually realize that is a set of beliefs that we've been indoctrinated into, and we can move through this and feel so powerful in ourselves when we realize that.
Yeah. And again, comes back to what we believe.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
belief
It does.
systems, they're always
Yeah.
at play. And I think the more that I'm learning within this, journey of hypnotherapy, the journey of hip training, all of that type of stuff, is that everything's at the mercy of our belief system, kind of like what I was saying before, is,
Mm,
yeah, if you've got the awareness, or you can start discovering that awareness to begin to unpack those beliefs and
mm,
keep the ones that are doing you really good, awesome, but then start to really become curious to the ones that perhaps are unresourceful and that they might not even belong to you. Maybe they belong to somebody else and you can give them back, and
mm.
then start to embody something that's a little bit more powerful.
Yeah, definitely. I've got a question for you, because I know you do like a lot of different things in your work. What's your favorite part of your work? Is it the teaching? Is it the hypnobirthing? Or is there anything you work with specifically that you just really enjoy?
I enjoy so much of it. I enjoy all of it, but I used to get this vision when I was really young, and I never understood it. I never knew the why or the how or the what. But I used to have this vision where I'd be standing in front of audiences talking to them.
Mm,
And I would have it over and over and over again. And like I said, I didn't even know what it was for. Like, I didn't have any idea, but I really believed it would happen one day. And so
mm-hmm.
the part that I love the most is being able to stand in front of audiences. I love public speaking. I mean, give me a mic, roll out the carpets, I'm here.
I
And
love that.
I never used to be able to tell people that. This is really new for me to be able to share that I love public speaking and I love being in front of audiences, because I think and maybe this, you could say this is a limiting belief of some sort, but there is a little bit of truth around it, is that as Kiwis, there's a lot of kind of tall poppy syndrome or I don't like the word syndrome, but tall poppy that kind of
Oh,
goes around. Oh,
100%. Go.
and I would be told like, "Oh, you're so up yourself," or something, and I'm certainly not. Like, I'm actually really humble, and I'm not up myself at all. But I really love standing in front of audiences and educating them and talking about health and well-being and hypnosis and mind-body connection and the nervous system, and
Mm,
like sharing tools, sharing ideas, hearing people's stories, like,
mm,
handing the mic over and somebody sharing a story because you've connected with them. And the big
mm,
part is when you stand up in front of an audience as leading from your heart,
mm, mhm. Yeah,
So
you can feel that. Like, you can 100%. I feel like whenever I'm talking to you, there's always this deep connection in what you share, and people can feel that.
yeah,
No, because you speak from your heart, but most people can. They might not like realize it on the conscious level, but you can feel it when someone's
mhm,
not right. But that. I think that's beautiful. I think that's really cool that you own that. And honestly, fuck that tall poppy syndrome, because it keeps so many of us stuck. I had these conversations yesterday with my lightning process group, and I've worked with international clients, and I traveled and things, and just actually it's just another layer as New Zealanders I think we really need to work on, because of course it's amazing that we can be grounded and down to earth, but if I'm thinking about it on like a neurological level, what we repeat and what we do consistently builds neural pathways, right? So from a young age we're taught to just stay small, and I think that low self-esteem of
fit in.
playing small, yeah, and fitting in tends to then become so habituated to the point that when we do something that might be seen as confident, we get into guilt and self-blame. And
Yeah,
I'm very much generalizing here, but it's such a small country thing.
yeah, yeah. And with talking about fitting in and sense of belonging, is that how I kind of look at it, is that we can do ourselves a real disservice because we often, as human beings, we want to belong. Like, no doubt about it, right? We're wired for connection. But we often do ourselves a disservice at the mercy of our value system. So for me, not being able to show up fully as myself or step on a stage because I'm scared about, will I fit in? Will people like me? All of those kind of like ideas that we can start to circle in. I won't help myself because I'll play small, right? And I'll choose sense of belonging over my value system. So what I've learned over time is to choose to remind myself, like, what do I value? What's important to me? And the sense of belonging will come, because the people that that will arrive on your doorstep will be the people that are meant to be for you, right? Like, people come in
Completely.
seasons.
People come in seasons, and when you can be more in alignment, and I don't love using that word because it's like a big word, what does that mean? But when
It's
you
loaded.
live, yeah, it's loaded, but it's kind of in the sky for some people, and I get that. When you're living in alignment with your values, or you are taking steps to really make choices in alignment with what's important to you,
Mm,
that's when the right people come in. That's when your people come in. And I think on that people thing, one uncomfortable thing can be when we are changing within and we're no longer resonating with people or things on the outside,
yeah.
and that kind of internal want or desire to find connection naturally. So we want to go back to what was, but then that doesn't fit either. So I think the more you can just practice being in your alignment and living to your values and making those courageous steps, like you said,
Yeah.
and trusting that the people will come in, because they do.
Yeah,
But
and being
so
brave,
being,
right? And I
yeah,
remember something that I was sitting there thinking, this is ages ago now, but I was sitting down, I was thinking, and I couldn't articulate it. Like, I couldn't get the words out properly, but I could, picture it all and visualize everything. And then I opened my phone, and you had written this post that had 100% like just nailed it on the head to what I was thinking, but I couldn't get
yeah,
the delivery out.
yeah, yeah,
And it was about how people hold on to past versions of you.
yeah.
So, like, if you're going through a season of change and you're working on yourself and you're creating, it's almost like that book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. You're becoming somebody new, but people will hold on to this past version of who they believe you to be.
Yeah,
And that can be so challenging. Like,
yeah,
navigating that, I think, can be, a challenge in itself. But it can also be, I suppose it can allow us to have more compassion for others, because we can show up from that space of, when we meet people, to choose how, that they're a new person. That, who knows, they could have worked on themselves and done all these different things, and to shift away from judgment, just to seek curiosity, to have that compassion, that type of thing.
yeah. And I think when people, I remember that post actually. It's coming back to me. We have to
Mm.
reteach people how to, like, the new version of us. I think it's our responsibility.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I think sometimes when we go through growth and we think, oh, we're on this high horse, or like, I'm on this path and you're not, when it's so not true. Like,
Mm.
everyone's going to go through their seasons, and yeah, we've got to really remain respectful of everyone else's journeys at the same time.
Yeah. And I think that some of the most powerful things can be in life is like your self-sabotage, your traumas, your, tribulations, your tests, all those things that I kind of mentioned before. They can be like the most powerful things within your journey to be able to create like positive shifts. I mean, I went through years, well, not years, but I definitely went through a period where it felt like I was going through a spiritual awakening. I believe that's what it was. And I was just full of self-sabotage, like,
Oh,
full
me
of it.
too. Yeah.
And it was the best thing for me, though, like, but it's in hindsight. You look back and then you're like, now I know why that happened,
Yeah.
and it actually is a good thing, because you've taken those lessons and learnings, and then the universe will obviously still put you in places with people to check, like, have you learned? Are you going to choose differently, or are you going to choose the same?
Yeah, just a little recheck.
Yeah.
Just a
Yeah.
final check for the next level. Yeah, I know that's the hardest thing. It's like when the lessons just keep coming until you really commit to what you say you're committing to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I think we share so many values, similar values in the way we navigate life and challenges. And I
Yeah.
think it probably just comes down to the type of work we do and being in these concepts a lot of the time as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Those people will show up in your life, when like you say, like, it's like I've met so many people on this journey who are amazing, like incredible at what they do, but incredible people that are now
Mm.
part of my life that, wouldn't have been part of my life a few years ago. But
Mm.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, having trust, having faith, all of those things.
Yeah, for sure. We've always got to be open to new connections as well. And
Yeah.
remember, so many people and things that haven't yet happened in our life that could
Mm.
completely change the path just
Yeah.
by like one conversation. I always keep that in mind when I'm feeling stuck. Like, there's so
Yeah.
many experiences yet to be had, or so many people that you just maybe haven't bumped into yet.
Yeah, I love that expression. One door closes, another one opens.
Yeah,
I love the
nice.
real short ones, and I put these up on Instagram stories today, and one of them is, if you can dream it, you can do it.
Yeah,
Whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, or whether you think you can, you think you can't, you're entirely right. And another one now is that, one door closes, another one opens.
stunning. Keep it short, keep it simple.
Yeah, keep it
I,
short and
I
simple.
can't remember
Probably
the long
sounds
ones, to be
cheesy.
honest.
Yeah, it probably sounds cheesy, but it's actually like, it really
No,
comes
it's
back
true.
to how you want to perceive it. Like, we
Yeah.
can be in the shittiest of what, circumstances as such, but it's really how we perceive it. It's like, comes down to our perspective and our lens that we take on something.
Hmm. Yeah. And we can build that and change that with practice.
Yeah. I was in a
Yeah.
cafe the other day, and well, it was probably a couple of months ago now, to be fair. And there was these ladies sitting next to me, and I was with Kane and Bella. Kane's my husband, Bella's my daughter.
Mm.
And uh, they sounded like they were kind of talking about hypnotherapy and NLP and stuff, but I didn't exactly know. I like to listen into people's conversations. And as I'm listening, she gave this really great analogy. And because I said to Kane, "Oh, I think I need to talk to these people. I think they like it into the same stuff as me." And he's like, "No, don't do that. That's weird." And then as he got up to go to the bathroom, he's like, "No, no, I think you need to talk to them because they're into the same stuff." I'm like, "Okay." So anyway, started chatting to them, and they asked what I did. And I said, "Oh, I'm a hypnotherapist." She's like, "Oh, I'm looking for a hypnotherapist." And I was like, "Great, awesome. Like, I was meant to be there, and she was meant to be there." But she gave this amazing analogy that I now use with clients all the time. And she was talking about perspectives and how we can perceive things. And she said, if you imagine that you walk into a house and you look through the first window of the house, and it's a really narrow view, right? Like, you can't see much. It's like ground level. There's only a few things that you can see. And then you decide, you know what, I'm going to walk upstairs. So I'm going to take myself upstairs and I'm going to look through the next window. And the next window gives you this like beautiful bird's eye view. And this
Mm.
bird's eye view allows you to like see so much more. And the idea or the analogy was, we get to perceive from what lens we choose. So whether we want to perceive something from that ground view where it's very narrow, narrowly focused, there's not much to it, but then we take ourselves upstairs and we can look from all these different lenses. It
Mm.
like gives us so much more choice that allows for
Mm.
so much more opportunity, so much more growth. Like, it
Mm.
really allows us to shift to higher ground because
I
we've
really
actually, yeah, I know, it's great.
like
Eh?
that.
So I said to
Yeah,
her, I was like, you know what? I'm going to use that with my clients now. Thank you.
yeah, I love it. Steal that. I might steal that from you.
Yeah, yeah,
Thanks, lady in the cafe.
yeah.
Uh, nice. Okay, so I mean, like, time is flying. We're almost at an hour.
Oh
So,
my
you
God.
know what you wish everyone knew. Again, it can be a tool. Maybe it's just something you've learned along your journey that stuck with you. That quote really fit the mold.
I think, to be honest, it would be that. It's very
Yeah.
much that everything is kind of like we've been talking about, is at the basis of our belief systems. What
Mm.
we believe, we become. And we can, our belief systems can either do us of service or they can do us of disservice. And it's really allowing choice around, if we're going to believe one thing, if we're going to believe that we're not smart or that we're not enough or whatever it might be, we're not worthy, it's also flipping the switch and creating a balance on the scales to rehearse, well, what would be the opposite? If I just for one day believed that I was worthy or I was smart, what would that look like for me? How would I feel? How would I show up differently in the world? And what opportunities would arrive?
Mm.
And straight away we're changing the script. We're writing a new chapter, and it becomes, we can actually start to tap into that more limitless version of ourselves that we all are. Like, I believe that everyone can unlock their potential and everyone has a limitless potential within them.
100%. Absolutely everyone. It just takes getting curious about what they might look like for you.
Yeah.
And, making choices that align with you. So where can people find you, Beck, and what have you got in terms of offerings and things at the moment?
Okay. So people can find me on Instagram's the best place. So it's BE_hypnotherapy. My website's www.behypnotherapy.co.nz. That covers everything that I work with, which is, anything from stress and anxiety to chronic pain to limiting beliefs. And then offerings, in terms of what offerings I've got at the moment, which was something that we haven't spoken about and might seem completely left field now, is that I've got an offering with a colleague where we're doing a intro day to past life regression. So
I don't know that.
yeah, so that's another avenue that we use in hypnotherapy. So sometimes what can happen is that we can regress to past lives and we don't even know why that's happened. Our subconscious has just taken us there. So whether you believe that or you don't, it really doesn't matter. Your subconscious has led you there for a purpose, which is what we'll talk about and uncover within the 5 hours that we're with people. It's just a small group that we're going to run. But yeah, just starting to kind of, tap into, perhaps if you've had moments of like serendipitous type moments or deja vu, or you feel like you've been here before, or there's a person in your life that constantly shows up, sometimes it can be worth exploring that avenue of past life regression.
Yeah, awesome.
You're welcome.
It's like new to me. I'm like, oh, I'm curious. Cool. Wow. Thank you so much for jumping on. I feel like we could have honestly talked for hours and hours and hours. And we will have to catch up again before I leave and head back up north. But it's been so easy to chat. I'm sure everyone listening will have taken some gems from this conversation, and you've given lots of things to think about. So yeah. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Awesome.
See you guys next time. Bye.